Chapter 18, A Kingdom of a Queen. Meanwhile, Amarok and Chenerah were shown a shelter by an Alsatian warrior. It was a small cottage, made of mud, like the others they had seen. Something was different here, however. The structure had a wooden door, which seemed strange to the wolf. Since the wolves and the Alsatians could not communicate among themselves by language, the warrior pointed wordlessly and sternly to the door. Amarok looked at him seriously and nodded before he opened the door ahead of his queen, and the attendant went his way. As they entered the room, the male spotted some Aramerans sitting around a table, just about to eat. They were obviously a family, not soldiers, for they were dressed in ordinary everyday clothes. "Noble sir!" exclaimed the father fox, standing up. "It is you, without a doubt." "Who, me?" asked Amarok in confusion, not knowing who he was dealing with. "Who are these foxes, Amarok? What is the meaning of this?" The queen wanted to know, but her subject could not tell her and shook his head in confusion. "You are the one who spared our lives. Do you remember? You asked your queen to let us go, and she did. Thanks to you, I can now live in peace with my family." Young Samo remembered. He remembered that there had been such a situation in the past. At that time his mistress let the Aramerans go after he offered his help in exchange for their release. But that had been an eternity ago. Originally, Chenerah had ordered these foxes to be escorted westward. "I remember, yes. But you must have taken a wrong turn somewhere. What are you doing here? Weren't you going to settle in the west of Arameria?" the male asked, and the mother fox replied by explaining that things had all changed quickly when you left. "Well, sir, we wanted to settle in the west. However, even this part was not spared from the war. There was not this destruction and killing as in the eastern part, but we could not live there." Her husband added, "There was no more work there. Food became scarce, the water was polluted, everywhere it stank of distrust and greed. This war awakened completely different desires in the foxes who had not been killed. Everyone stood alone and there was no sense of community there anymore. And then when the first one started," his vixen added, "freeing people from the deportation camps, we knew it was time to go." "You mean the labor camps of the Radovan Carteron era?" "Yes," nodded the family man, "and all the Aramerans knew about it. No one can claim not to have noticed. They knew it when power changed hands after the leader's death, at the latest. Some whispered beforehand and wondered where one or the other, perhaps somewhat disadvantaged, fox had gone. Then it became clear when this spaceship was stolen by the wolves to destroy the then leader. He thought we were stupid, but we were just blinded." "Yes," spoke now the wolf queen, "and truly we have provided for an end of this blinding. If it were not for us and the Samoyeden people, yours would probably never have known." "You may be right, Chenerah," the Arameran nodded. Amarok, however, had a completely different question, and he addressed it to the fox parents. "You say that the Aramerans were freed from the camps and that's why you left. What was so bad about that? I mean, it's a good thing, isn't it?" The male fox grinned now, but he did not look happy. "Certainly, my dear sir. The Aramerans living in the west freed them themselves, that's true. But they didn't let them out just to give them freedom." "They didn't? What?" "Well, they were hungry." "What?" The wolf spoke in horror, and a light seemed to come on immediately to his queen as well, for she opened her jaws and seemed completely shaken. "Yes," the fox's wife then repeated, "they had to eat something, after all. There were no supplies from the east. As edibles became scarcer and scarcer, the stores were looted. And in the end, many could not help themselves, picking out the weak, whom no one would mourn anyway. We couldn't stand by any longer and headed for the Hedonaries. By the gods! This can't be happening at all. How low have the Aras sunk?" the young wolf remarked, clutching his forehead. The male Arameran looked over to the table where his children sat, clattering their spoons and slurping their soup. "We must thank you, dear Samoyeden. You have a great heart. Without you, I know, we would not be now. Without the hospitality of the Alsatians, we would surely have perished. Also, they could have killed us, but fortunately, not everyone is the same." "I am shaken," Amarok confessed, sitting down on one of the chairs. "But I must also say that this world is very small here. I never thought I'd see you guys again." "We are equally pleased." This is an inn for guests. There will be a room upstairs for you and your queen as well. I would say, dine with us and let us pray for the others of our race." Amarok nodded and remembered the evening when he had met Joliard again at his home after a long time. At that time they spent a nice evening, Aramarans and Samoyedans, although it was already clear then that a new conflict between their two peoples was developing. At the same time, they all touched their glasses and Amarok followed a Samoyeden custom, which also pleased Joliard very much, by standing up and giving a toast, "Let's drink to a nice, rainy but comfortable afternoon and an even nicer evening. And let's wish that Aramarans and Samoyedans everywhere in this world can do the same, together, someday. We know it can work. So we hope that someday all the others will understand it too." This thought appealed to him, and when plates were provided, soup poured, he knew, peace was conceivable always, at any time and everywhere, if only the right characters would live it. He, the rather insignificant wolf, had made many mistakes, now had to work on correcting them. But if even his highborn queen had a strong respect and appreciation left for her subject, it must mean that he was one of those who could bring peace again by inspiring others and moving their hearts. After they had finished eating, the male fox sent his pups to bed. So now the four of them sat at the heavy wooden table and talked. In Alsatiania, too, they knew Copac, this delicious drink, and here it was called the same. That, the Aramaran commented, is probably the only commonality in our three cultures. Drinking is what everyone wants. No laughter rang out, for as funny as this remark seemed at first, it was sadly true. After the Anthros had raised their glasses a few times, always giving different toasts, they seemed to slowly forget that the human as their great adversary was getting closer and closer. The vixen now also said goodbye and disappeared up the stairs to the upper floor. Her husband rose and spoke gravely, "Dear Amarok, I have something for you." The wolf looked at him questioningly as he ran into a corner of the room and returned with a long sword scabbard. He quickly fell to his knees in front of the baffled male wolf and, with his head bowed, held out the scabbard to him in a gesture of submission. "My lord, my name is Wadarko and I was primus of the leader Rado von Carteron of Aramaria." "So, you were his top soldier?" "Yes, my lord, and I lay my services at your feet. You saved my life and that of my wife and children. For this, my sword and my loyalty are yours from now on." Wide-eyed, Amarok stood up, bowed slightly, and said he couldn't possibly accept it, had selflessly saved the foxes because he thought it was right at the time. "Please," Wadarko spoke in a quivering voice, "take this blade as a token of my gratitude. Do not refuse, for otherwise I could never again look myself in the eyes in the mirror." The male wolf sighed and took the sheath, while the gift-giver did not move and continued to stare at the ground. "I thank you," spoke the Samo. "But now please stand up again. This is uncomfortable for me." "Why?" intervened Serena, looking arrogant. "He is defeated by the wolves, defeated by you, Amarok. It is right that he should show you who is master now." But the young wolf turned his head to her and said, "I can't believe that you still haven't understood, my queen. I don't want to play the hero here, the big, strong warrior. At some point, enough is enough, don't you think? Do you always have to pour more salt into open wounds?" The mistress looked astonished, piqued, but said no more. She knew how Amarok felt and what he thought about the war. Whatever it was, she had always found it difficult to show off her repartee with him. She had been impressed by him ever since she first met him. "She is right, Amarok. In my country, giving up one's blade is equivalent to giving up one's manhood. But I do not care about that. Take it. Nothing has come of all the manhood and heroism of our nation. We have developed other weapons and now use swords only as emotional symbols of our strength and dominance. And both I am now ready to hand over to you as our savior. May you do better with them than any of us ever could." "I don't know what the wolf stammered, slowly unsheathing a shiny silver weapon so that his countenance was reflected in it. Wadarko now stood up again and smiled, "I know you will use this weapon to make peace. You are the one who can do it. I saw that in your sad eyes then. You are connected to my people in a special way. I feel that." The Samoyeden moved the sword back and forth, balanced it on his hand and turned it. Its hilt was massive, entwined with a noble, shiny black banding and crowned by a fox head with bared teeth. "An incredibly noble weapon," he marveled, and the fox nodded. Then the Samo affirmed, "You are right. I have a special connection with your people, for once I had an Aramaran friend whom I loved above all things. His name was Chenerah Gajaze." "I see," Wadarko agreed, realizing that the wolf's eyes were shining with moisture. "That is a very beautiful name. Do you know what it means?" "No, we never talked about it, I'm afraid," sighed Amarok, "and also I have to admit that I'm one of those who doesn't know much about the supposed enemy. I'm sorry." In a time well before the first great war between Aramarans and Samoyedans, our peoples actually spoke not only a similar language, but even the same one, he was told. What you call your wolfish, what the Aramarans call Old Aramaran, was identical about 2,000 years ago. "Oh, is that so?" he asked curiously, but could not take his eyes off that magnificent weapon. His queen, however, nodded thoughtfully and spoke, "Chenerah Gajaze, my protector is the spirit being. A very beautiful name, I think. It sounds as if his parents knew his worth and loved him very much." Now the young wolf was perplexed. "How do you know what his name means, Your Majesty?" "We have a history together, dear Amarok. Some of us remember it." Then Amarok was overcome with a sense of strength and courage. He would do whatever it took to end this war. Even if everyone else didn't understand, he knew, the people of Aramaria and Samojija were connected by a common past, so there had to be a common future. "Then be it so, as tradition would have it, I give this sword, under me as its new leader, a new name, Chenerah." "That's right, Amarok," rejoiced the Wolf Queen, who by now had risen and stood loftily at his side. "Never again shall this weapon harm a wolf." "Yes," he confirmed in response, "and never to a fox." "What do you mean?" She didn't understand. "What will you use it for, if not against the enemies of the wolves, Amarok?" "The foxes," he explained, "are not our enemies. The humans are. And it is they whose blood will be on this blade until they have left our common world. This I swear, on the grave of my friend." He gritted his teeth and pictured in his mind's eye the tree he had planted in honor of his love for his fox, which had grown so tall and strong in the meantime. Equally steadfast, unshakable, life-giving, protective and defiant. Like this tree, he also wanted to be from now on. Together with his friend, in the form of this sword, he would free the world, bring it to reason, drive out evil. "You have a big heart, Wolf," the male fox praised again, adding that it was important not to forget now that humans were not far away. "Some sleep is important now. We have a healing bath in the cellar. Lie down in it, Amarok. It will strengthen you." The wolf nodded with a smile. "Where is the Lord Sovereign? Wasn't he supposed to meet us here?" asked Serena, and her subject shrugged. "I think he has a lot to plan and discuss. Go to bed quietly, Your Majesty. I will take the healing bath and sleep later as well. Tomorrow we will be able to speak with Chenerah." The queen nodded and extended her hand to Wadarko in a manner befitting her rank, so that he could take it and lead her highness up the stairs. Serena had to play off the comment that this was how a fox was supposed to behave towards his new ruler, just as the fox couldn't help but ridicule her request somewhat by speaking, "Oh, forgive me, Your Highness. I hope you will allow a lowly fox creature to touch you." Suddenly they both giggled, let go of each other and ran up the stairs side by side. Amarok did not quite understand how this sudden transformation of the snooty Serena into a, almost fraternized with the foxes, she-wolf came about. However, he just shook his head, stretched his bones, and listened to them crack. Yes, it was time for some relaxation, that was for sure. As he descended the steps to the cellar, he looked at the sword and smiled gently. He was not really happy, how could he be, in wartime? But he now felt stronger, more self-confident. Finally, he felt again that there could be a ray of hope in this otherwise bleak world. Halfway up the stairs, he suddenly became wide-eyed, although the exit was barely lit, Aramaran characters were glowing on both sides of the sword's edge. Since he could read this language in large parts, he recognized which sentence was now shining strangely brightly here, per aspera ad astra. "This cannot be," he said to himself. This was the sentence that Chenerah had said to him when he had appeared to him after his death. Can it really be true? Chenerah? He asked himself in his mind, but continued down the stairs so that he could see a large bath in the middle of the room. The young wolf sat down in the milk-filled tub and closed his eyes. The warmth did his tense muscles and his battered body good. He could literally feel how his wounds slowly but steadily closed themselves and the pain ended. "That's good," he sighed, taking a deep breath. He had been sitting there for quite a while, about to fall asleep, when suddenly someone spoke to him. "As we see, you are enjoying yourself, dear Amarok." Quickly, the male dog widened his eyes and spoke in fright, "Your Majesty. You are here?" At this, in a flash, he put his hands on his crotch, which could not be seen anyway through the opaque liquid. He looked at his queen and realized that she was not clothed, but had only put on a silken cloth. She smiled and slowly slid the cloth off her body, which the male acknowledged by averting his eyes in embarrassment. "Your Majesty," he opined, "you want to take a bath, too, then?" "So it is," the noblewoman confirmed, taking a provocative step toward the basin. "Unless we disturb you and you wish to deny your queen company." Of course, Amarok did not want to deny his mistress her wish at all and nodded without looking at her. "If my company is pleasant to you, very gladly, my queen." The she-wolf first sat down on the edge of the pool and then climbed into the tub. She sighed comfortably and leaned against the wall opposite her subject. She examined him closely and grinned when she noticed that he avoided any eye contact and unnecessarily hid his manhood from her. "Very pleasant, isn't it?" she asked a moment later, and Amarok just nodded mutely. He was embarrassed by this situation and felt uncomfortable. Besides, he had never seen an unclothed she-wolf up close before. In addition, this was his queen. Why did she have to feel like taking a bath right now? "Look at us, Amarok," she commanded, and reluctantly the male dog followed. The thought quickly popped into his head that it was lucky that the milk was almost up to her neck, because even her breasts were hidden. Now the wolf also dared to look her in the eyes without being embarrassed any longer. He took his hands from his crotch and spread his arms to hold on to the edge of the pool. "You couldn't sleep, Your Majesty?" "It is difficult, yes. You will surely have a similar problem after all that happened recently, won't you?" the monarch inquired, and again the young wolf answered only with a nod, after which an uncomfortable silence set in again. Chenerah walked slowly toward him and noticed that he was making wide eyes of astonishment. "Don't worry, faithful Amarok," she soothed, "we won't bite you, if that's what you're thinking." And no, Your Majesty." Stammered Amarok, whereupon his mistress interrupted him by gently stroking his head fur and sighing. "You should not be afraid. Any other wolf, any Aramaran, but not you. No one is more faithful, more devoted, more loyal, and that, even though you think nothing of nobility and etiquette. That's what we appreciate about you." The male's heart throbbed when his queen touched him. She was very close to him and again shame overcame him. She had to know that he was also unclothed, didn't she? What did she intend with this closeness to him, an insignificant subordinate? "My queen. What are you doing?" he asked, his knees shaking as Chenerah gently brushed her hand down the side of his head, coming to a stop only at his pelvis. "We know," she began, "what they say about us. Do you think there is any truth in the rumors about our sexuality, Amarok?" This question shocked her counterpart recognizably, and Amarok could not and would not give her an answer. Her current behavior was somewhat insinuating, yes. But how did she get on this subject now? He too had heard about the queen being frigid, not interested in males or females, and not even practicing masturbation. She was asexual, most Samoyedans were sure of that. But they talked about it only behind closed doors. "Your Majesty. It's none of my business, and I don't care if you..." The male began his answer, but broke off and clenched his teeth in fright when he felt Chenerah's hand on his scabbard. He flinched and reflexively pressed his body against the wall of the tub. The mistress, however, grinned smugly and tightened her grip, causing Amarok to let out a low moan. "Be but my K-Queen. What was she doing? What was that supposed to be?" Frozen, the wolf could no longer think clearly and was now trapped between the wall and the noblewoman. Trapped. Just as his lungs felt now as he breathed heavily. Chenerah did not leave him and came closer. She put her free arm around Amarok's neck and pressed her body against his. Then, in a smoky voice that sounded like willingness and lust, she whispered, "We are the queen and we take what we want. And now we want you, Amarok, and what you are trying to hide from us down there." Don't do this, please. The prisoner pleaded, but this left the queen cold. She wrapped her legs around the male's waist so that she was no longer on the floor and clung to his body. A quick hand movement followed, and one more time the Samo moaned, accompanied by an erotic look from his mistress. She had withdrawn his fur pouch, and Amarok guessed what she was about to do. Again and again, he gave a soft "No, Your Majesty," but she unperturbed slowly rubbed her shapely body against him. "You'd rather have sex with that dog now, wouldn't you?" she teased. "But first you must help us. It's hard to bear." What do you mean?" the male stammered unintelligently. "To have such a masculine, strong male around us as you are. We feel you are capable of great things." Amarok tried to rearrange his thoughts. Why was she suddenly like this? What had changed? Had he done something wrong? Could this statement be from Serena? No. Not from his queen. She seemed to be out of her mind, gave him again and again wild kisses on the muzzle, left, right on the lips. Although the assaulted man did not return them and tried to think of neutral things, but a grin of the monarch revealed that his body below the groin signaled his readiness for more. "Amarok, become our king, the king of Samojija," demanded Serena, but he only shook his head, overwhelmed, and breathlessly said he did not want to be king. "That wasn't a request," she demanded, tightening her grip between his legs again. He was at her mercy, and on top of that she was his ruler. Had she lost her mind, drunk too much? Amarok as king? "You can share anything with us, Amarok," she snorted, and he could literally feel how electrified, charged, and libidinous she now was. I am a nobody. Please don't put this burden on my shoulders. You think the people need to get to know you first, don't you?" She spoke, and Amarok felt her move his penis into position below the surface of the milk. "I will give you the," she murmured, interrupting as she lowered her body down. Amarok scrunched up his eyes and jaw. Serena threw her head back in a voluptuous manner and continued, "Provide access to anything you need." They both groaned, and the male dog tensed all his muscles. The queen had not chosen this phrase for no reason. Amarok and she were united without the young wolf having wanted it. "Please stop, Your Majesty," he pleaded with closed eyes, unable to resist. But the queen had her arms around his neck and was moving her body up and down so that she could feel Amarok inside her. Never before had the male done anything like this. After all, he had only slept with Joliet and Chenerah. It felt different, but it was neither better nor worse. While he had never ruled out trying sex with a female at some point, in this way and under the circumstances, one could not speak of trying, enjoyment, or desire on his part. With each stroke Serena spoke one of the words, power, recognition, security, and finally breathed a long-winded, sex, into his ear, whereupon he could not hold back and came panting to orgasm. "Ah, no!" he exclaimed, gasping for breath. The queen gave a loud sigh and moved up and down a few more times. She kissed Amarok tenderly and he just let it happen. He struggled for breath with his eyes downcast, feeling used and discarded. Enjoyment felt different. Why had she done that? Serena had indeed simply taken what she felt like. She had ruthlessly used her loyal subject and wrested this service from his body, even though she knew that Amarok and Chenerah were a couple. Without understanding and sadly, the male shook his head, and the mistress gently embraced him and whispered, "Forgive us, Amarok. It had to be, for now you stand in the duty of your country. Now you are my consort, the king of Samojija." "How could you do this, Your Majesty?" the male asked with tears in his eyes as the mistress released her grip and got out of the pool. "If you want," she said, "you can take the Alsatian with you to Samojija and the palace, if you feel like having a male. Who can blame you?" "Too kind," the other spoke wryly, scowling at her. Serena put the embroidered silk scarf around herself again and added, "Now that you have done as your mistress requested, you are welcome to go to the Kesar's chamber. You are now king and can enjoy yourself when and with whom you wish." Amarok did not answer, and his face changed from one of anger to one of suffering as tears of shame fell into the tub. "We would gladly go with you one more time, but tomorrow after sunrise you should be ready, my king. For then we will set out and return to Luna. Sleep well and rest." The fawn turned around with a gallant movement and left the room. She left him behind, humiliated and broken. Betrayed and stolen. Dirty and abused. Sadly, the wolf got out of the tub and sat down on a bench to soak in the milk. While doing so, he thought about how arrogant and smug his queen was. Without asking him to be, she had decided from one moment to the next that he should be king. Rights and duties passed to him at the moment of forced climax, and there was now no turning back. How could everything have turned out this way? This had to be a bad dream. Worse still, however, he was tormented by the question of what to say to his boyfriend now. Would it mean the end of his relationship with him? He, Amarok, could do nothing regarding all this. Would Kesar be angry and maybe even mess with Serena? He had now enough. Everyone wants him something bad and everything he had done was wrong. He now realized that he had to face the Aramarans. The key to ending the suffering on all sides was his punishment. Amarok. Someone shouted joyfully, and the wolf caught sight of his Alsatian friend who had found him here in the basement. However, the dog quickly recognized the sadness in his friend's eyes and asked, "What's wrong? Is everything all right?" He sat down with him and tilted his head to the side questioningly. "Sure," his friend sniffled, wiping the last tears from his face. "Really? What happened?" "All is well, Chenerah. I have decided to travel back to Samojija tomorrow morning, together with Serena." "What?" asked Gajaze incredulously. "You can't go back there yet. It's probably crawling with people there." "So?" his friend replied. "Do you think we're safer here? The gods know what people will do when they have climbed the mountains. I'll go and bring them home. My country needs its queen now. Then I'll go to Aramaria, to Bolmare, and turn myself in. Now that Atamak is dead, his sister is mistress. I know her. Perhaps she will show mercy." The dog thought for a moment and then opened up to him about what he and the leader dog had recently discussed. "The plan is for you to lure the humans back to Aramaria. They will follow the Ispasetka and you and turn away from Alsatiania." "Oh, how convenient!" exclaimed Amarok wryly, putting his clothes back on. "Isn't it great? At least this way your country won't get smacked in the face by them." "Yes, but..." "Yes, that's how I do it. I take this stupid lump with me. But I don't do it for the dogs, I do it for us wolves. For the foxes as well. If they get me, they'll leave you all alone." "That's great, isn't it?" His dog did not understand why the wolf spoke so ironically. He didn't look at him, sounding as if he didn't care. Who had he been talking to here? Who had put this in his head? On the other hand, it was better that Amarok would leave of his own accord than that he would involuntarily play the bait, as planned by the leader. "Amarok, I don't want you to go. I have consulted with the lead dog. She thinks it's a good plan to lure the human away. I, however, do not want to endanger you. If you want to leave, I won't be able to hold you." "That's very true. But the Ispasetka stays here. I want you to know that I'm going after you. It will take some time, but we will take on the Gajans. Once you're in Aramaria, if the foxes think they've captured you, we'll fake your death. The news would spread quickly. We don't want the humans to come back to Aramaria at all." Amarok, who had now dressed again and taken his sword, stood there confidently and spoke deprecatingly, "Last-second rescue by fake murder. But sure, of course. You know, great Kesar. I already know this won't work. You're not going to save me." Now the dog was almost beside himself, stunned. He opened his muzzle and stood directly in front of his wolf. "What are you saying? What makes you say that, Amarok? What's the matter with you?" But now he looked sad and took the sheepdog in his arms. "Sweetie, don't think like that. Of course we will save you," he said. "We will set out for your liberation as soon as the people here are defeated. In the process, you will be accidentally killed by your own sword. We'll put on a show. It will be all right." "Sure," the younger one confirmed sullenly. "Where did you even get that thing?" "It is a gift from a former prime of the Ara leader. I will take it to defend myself." His friend sighed. "I will tell the leader that we are not following her plan. Serena was supposed to get the Ispasetka out of the lake tomorrow morning. After all, she's probably the only one who can do it at the moment." "You mean? Aria's spirit has partially passed to her." "What?" "It's hard to explain. Anyway, we're not going to do that. It'll stay where it is. If you want to go to Arimaria, that's your choice. But I would rather have you here by my side while we defend this stone here." The shepherd loosened the hug, while Amarok smiled slightly and said, "Do you know that sounds totally dumb? We're defending a rock. I don't think the world has seen that yet." "Well," his friend now grinned as well, "many have died for less in the history of our three nations." The Samo nodded in agreement and scratched his head. "It might be better, though, if one of us here beats up the humans and I make sure that at least the foxes and wolves come to their senses and join this cause. I'll send them all to you as soon as Carteron's daughter has heard me out. She can always punish me afterwards. It is more important that the Earthlings make a departure. I believe that she of all people, as an Arimaran, should see it the same way." "So you're going without the Ispasetka?" "It had better stay here. That way I can also go to Arimaria undetected. Better safe than sorry." "Right you are," Gajaze praised and accompanied his lover to a guest room where they sat down on the bed. He took off his shirt and smiled gently at his friend, who, however, did not dare to turn to him. "What's wrong, Amarok?" asked Gajaze, puzzled, as he laid the silver-gray rod on the bed beside him, looking sad. "Chenerah." He spoke softly, "Serena. She made me." "Oh, no," the dog said. "I forgot all about that. Damn." The male wolf looked questioningly. Did his friend know about what had happened? How? But of course. He said to himself in thought, his eyes widening. Who should know, if not he who wrote it all down? Wait a minute. That means. Hastily, he put his thoughts in order. The clearer the picture that emerged, the angrier he became. Immediately he remembered that Chenerah had always said that he had written this story in which the wolf was situated. Amarok could not lose sight of that. He clenched his fists, because as unbelievable as it felt, it was his friend's fault that the queen had raped him. "You'll pay for this, dog. Now I've had enough." He growled loudly and, without further words and with full force, hit the muzzle of his friend, who exclaimed out in fright and had to put up with more punches in the middle of his nose and lips before he could realize what was going on. Loudly, the wolf's hand throbbed on the canine jaw, whose flews were already bleeding and who was trying to get to safety behind his arms. He had fallen sideways on the ground, completely surprised and sought shelter behind his arms. 4, 5, 6 strokes. Amarok always took a full swing and strained to hit as hard as he could. "I told you," he growled, "that I wanted to kill you. Now. It's time, dirty dog." 7, 8 and 9. Chenerah could not resist and even the arms did not prevent some blows on the head reaching their destination. His wolf was like in a bloodlust, in ecstasy, could not and would not stop. After the 12th punch, he stopped, for now he was out of breath. Panting, he asked hoarsely, "Well, you great creator. How's that? Horny, isn't it? To be really broken and humiliated. That's what you need." Again his hand turned into a fist, but before he could strike further, his victim managed to get up and onto the other side of the bed so that Amarok could no longer reach him. He held his bleeding muzzle and one of his eyes he could no longer open. His head was pounding. Amarok," he began, holding his free hand protectively in front of him, "what is this?" This, however, made him even angrier and he threatened, snarling, "Ask that one more time, dog, and the next thing you'll feel is a chair in your neck." Bowed and with a face filled with pain, the Alsatian saw that his adversary was quivering with rage and presenting his teeth like shining blades. Now it became clear to him that Amarok was thinking that the rape was a part of the written history. He tried to explain that he was sorry, that he no longer had any control over what had happened. The Samoyeden, however, did not want to hear this at all, but walked purposefully around the bed towards him. Immediately he lashed out and slapped the dog so hard in the face that he yelled out and fell belly down on the bed. Taking this opportunity, Amarok rummaged around in the blankets of the bed and formed them into a rope. "Yes, that's right. You're one of those," he said to himself, smiling grimly before tying the Kesar's hands to the bedpost. The dog was dazed and its bloody face stained the bedding a deep red, while the wolf bound its paws together so that no more resistance or escape was possible. Without being able to see the attacker, Chenerah spoke, "Amarok. Hear me. Please. It had to be done. Let me explain. The other sat down on a chair next to the bed and hissed, "You miserable mutt. Come on, tell me a story. Come up with something. The Wolf Kingdom needs a Wolf King for the monarchy to live on," Kesar sighed. "So what? What do I care?" His friend shouted at him, but the dog did not stir, but continued to speak in a hushed voice. "She needs a male at her side who is strong and confident." "Ah, my head. Oh, how nice. Sovereign. Then you could have fucked her instead of letting her rape me, you perverted pig." But," Chenerah murmured softly, not completing the sentence. "Talk, you dirty dog." "But I'm a dog." "You are a wolf." "You don't say." "Quite a great recognition, Chenerah. Why not ask someone else? Why didn't you just let her ask me instead of letting her jump me like a whore in heat? Not that I would have gone for it. I knew you would dutifully follow her order. It had to happen to you." Amarok did not understand what this was all about, but he did not care. Friends, lovers, wouldn't do that to you. Chenerah was a liar, an egoist and a deviant creature, the wolf said to himself in his mind. And what for? Isn't Chenerah enough of an autocrat? He wanted to know. Gajaze did not answer, but only groaned in pain, whereupon his friend grabbed the back of his neck and shook him. "Speak plainly at last, dog. I've had enough of your riddles." He hissed and clenched his jaws. A brief moment later, his victim opened to him in a low voice, "It's not about the king at her side, Amarok. It's about the prince under her heart." Immediately after the Alsatian uttered this sentence, Amarok let go of him and promptly understood. Chenerah, the queen of Samojija, was to become pregnant by him, a rather insignificant wolf. "By the gods!" He spoke, widening his eyes. "This can't be happening. Are you fucking serious, Chenerah?" Only monosyllabic apologies rang out, causing Amarok to once again lose his composure, hastily kneel on the nearly unconscious dog and doggedly pull its pants down a bit. "So, you disgusting dog. Now I'll show you how to really break someone." He hurried, forcibly moving the other anthro into position and unzipping his own pants. "No. Ama," whimpered Chenerah, unable to move as the Samo squeezed the canine thighs with his knees. "Oh yes you are, dog. This is going to hurt you very, very much. Let's see who's sovereign here then." He spoke, and low, muffled wails from a shut muzzle filled the room as the bed quickly wobbled and creaked. Chenerah was defenseless and let the situation wash over him. Again and again he felt pain, shed tears and whimpered that he was very sorry for everything. But he also knew that there was no stopping Amarok now, all the pent-up aggression now had to come out of him, had to be released. After all, he had every reason to hate this dog, because it was he who had come up with this story. He would have liked to rewrite it now, maybe stop time, but he couldn't do that anymore. Besides, there was a reason that he, or the architect, had built in the scenes between Amarok and his queen. Whatever the future would bring Amarok, he would live on in some form. Although the latter knew nothing of these reasons, it was the case that he would not have been interested today anyway. This part of the story also had to happen so that the Vulpes Lupus Canis could find its fulfillment. The next morning, Amarok walked out of the building and looked serious when he asked an Alsatian for 2 pajakas that he and Chenerah wanted to use as mounts. With a deep bow, the man willingly gave him the animals, although he only understood his request through his gestures. With a petrified expression, he entered the cottage where the Wolf Queen was having breakfast. She stood up, smiled and said, "There you are, my king. How was your night? Come, my queen. Let's go. I can't stand another minute among these barbarians." He ordered her, whereupon she made big eyes. Chenerah nodded slightly and stepped outside with him. When she noticed the 2 four-legged friends, she asked cluelessly, "Oh, what about the Lord Sovereign? Doesn't he want to accompany us? Isn't he the escort?" But coldly, her current husband directed her to the back of one of the pajakas with a serious wave of his hand and sat up. Disdainfully, he spat on the ground, looking down disparagingly at a few Alsatians sitting off to the side. "Let us leave this barren land, my queen. We have a queen to restore to your kingdom." "To your kingdom?" "Amarok," she marveled, "where did this change come from? Is everything all right with you?" "Pa. But of course, your majesty. Let the dog protect his stone here and rot in the process. The monarch began as the male wolf clicked the reins and rode off. She pondered for a brief moment, but then turned to the mud huts and spoke quietly to herself, "It was nice here. Let's make sure it stays that way."